In 1953, unbeknownst to the general public, the CIA conducted experiments on both the general population and government employees regarding the possibilities of things like mind control and hypnosis. Americans were dosed with LSD, oftentimes against their will or without their knowledge. The project was ultimately shut down in 1973 and did not become known to the public until afterward. Today, we dive into the complex mystery of Project MKUltra. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another mystery on Red Web, the show all about the unknown, the unsolved, true crime, cryptids, mysteries galore, sometimes on the internet. I'm your host, Trevor Collins, and joining me as always, the other host, my other half, coming in with his gut instinct, Alfredo Diaz.
I've heard a little bit about this.
Mm-hmm.
We've done hundreds of episodes.
Millions of seconds.
Okay. Yeah, I went, hold on.
I quantify differently.
Well, you got to go find those other episodes.
You know.
This honestly is probably up there with the most terrifying.
Truly.
Because something like this is... Look, this damn podcast.
Every week he unravels more, Christian.
It's getting to me. Okay, so you damn well know there's something to this capacity happening against our will, and we just don't know about it today.
Don't drink the tap water, Fredo.
It's not like, ghosts could be real, could not be. And obviously, murder cases, all that kind of stuff, very terrifying.
Yeah.
But will not happen to majority of people. There's gotta be, look, I know I sound out there, but there's gotta be something that the government is doing to us that we just don't know about. And I'm usually calm, okay? I'm usually calm down. I'm not usually this person.
You're starting the new year off hot.
I just feel like, how is there not, right? And then you look at the MKUltra stuff, and you're just like, how is, they didn't just go, we can't do that no more. They're still going in some way, shape, or form.
That's the thing is, this was
probably
in
digitally, just tracking everything, but
Right. There's digital forms of this very same thing. There could be versions of this, parallels of what we're going to talk about today. Now, oh my God, there's so much to talk about. This is our first episode recorded here in the new year. We batched a few. So
welcome to 2023.
We've already
everyone.
been releasing them this year, but so we're really diving back into it. And there's a few things to respond to here. First of all, this is the perfect opportunity. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of new listeners on this particular episode.
Right.
This is a big topic. I'm so stoked we're finally covering
welcome.
it. We've talked about this as a theory for things like Mothman, one of our linchpins in this show, a centerpiece
Everything
to our
connects back.
Red Web. It's our 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, except it's 7 degrees of Mothman. Everything relates back to Mothman. But there's a few other things too. This is a perfect opportunity for me. Normally, I'm well informed. This research is usually done by Jillian and the team. So Christian, the chair, is going to take a more active role this episode because I'm going to be reacting alongside you, Alfredo, to some of the extra information because there's a lot going on and the team did their best job to try to keep it all straight. There's a lot of conflicting information as always with these unsolved topics, but there's classified stuff, there's anecdotal stuff, there's documented stuff. And so we're going to try to dump it all out there in the most concise manner. But I also want to say there's some very disturbing subject matter revolving around human experiments within this episode. So with all that said, I think this is the perfect opportunity for me to dive into this with you reacting.
Yeah.
And another thing you kind of tipped my brain off to was the government could be doing stuff akin to this right now.
Yes.
And in recent episodes, you and I have talked about UFOs, UAPs, and et cetera. And in those episodes, we've said, they've declassified all sorts of stealth aircraft back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, et cetera. And those could be the cause for those UAPs at that time. Well, guess what? I think it was only but a month or two ago, that a new stealth bomber was just recently declassified.
Okay.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, I tried to look it up just in this last couple seconds. The B-21 Raider might be it. Very similar to the B-2 in shape. That triangular shape, but it just underscores your exact point. The things that we talk about, that's what makes me so fascinated to talk about these things. Yeah, I love really stretching the realms of reality and going, maybe what if? but I also love the morbid truth that could be underlying our normal, sober world.
Yeah.
And with that said, I think we should dive into Project MKUltra.
We should. But real quick,
Okay.
I think my adjacent fear to this,
Okay.
okay, all right, this is up there. Adjacent fear, okay, is you damn well know there's some scientist somewhere that's getting overly buff, right? Pushing the limits of his
And
buffness.
you know what I'm going to call him? Adjacent born.
Adjacent born. And you know he's pushing the limits of his buffness, experimenting with some type of bacteria or chemical or something that is just like, who's to stop someone from, I don't
Creating
know.
the Powerpuff Girls.
Right.
Chemical. Okay, you can tell it's our first episode. We're goofing off.
Yeah, but
welcome to Red Web.
I'm just saying, like, building something, experimenting with chemicals, and bacteria, and infections, diseases, and
absolutely. That's the thing that is so morbidly fascinating, is that it rides the line of deep conspiracy or morbid reality.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you could easily spiral off into conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat realm, or you could easily tumble into, nope, that was declassified yesterday. And you go, oh my God.
Yep.
Also, bear with me. I'm coming off a bit of a little case of food poisoning. And so if I'm a little winded throughout this, it is what it is.
You know why.
All right. But with that said, I think we should dive into Project MKUltra. All right. So we're going to start with the reveal and the background of this project before we really go all the way back. So December 1974, journalist Seymour M. Hersh wrote an article for the New York Times titled Huge CIA Operation. I have to read this in all caps like it is.
Right, yeah.
Huge CIA operation reported in U.S. against anti-war forces, other dissidents in Nixon years. Go ahead and Control F dissidents, copy paste, define in Google. What does that mean?
Yeah. Chair?
Dissidents?
You read that to me and I went, it means something.
Someone went, got it.
Yeah.
A dissident is a person who opposes official policy, especially that of an authoritarian state.
Got it. Okay. So we have some political strife and a huge CIA operation reported. So the article itself alleged that the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, had been surveying U.S. citizens and had intelligence files on about 10,000 U.S. citizens since the 1950s. This included opening mail, wiretapping, following, photographing, and even break-ins. So this isn't just a simple case of...
Very invasive.
Very invasive, and I know we're very numb to this these days because we go, everything's on the internet and digitally tracked.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all have gigabyte files somewhere in a black vault somewhere.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, we've been acclimated to that 1984 business. This is the 50s through the 70s, and people are being wiretapped, but also followed, photographed, broken into. So this is a pretty big bombshell of an article.
Like, what do you need to break in to get? I don't...
Yeah, what are they looking for?
Well, I guess
It's
the
a good question.
wiretap?
Yeah, like what are they seeking? It's a very good question.
And then also, the follow-up is, what are they seeking?
Mm-hmm. So for context, let me read an excerpt from this article. Quote, under the National Security Act of 1947, setting up the CIA, the agency was forbidden to have police, subpoena, law enforcement powers, or internal security functions inside the United States. Those responsibilities fall to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which maintains a special internal security unit to deal with foreign intelligence threats. Basically saying the CIA was formed not too long before this whole program went down, and it wasn't meant to investigate internally, but rather internationally.
True.
From external threats, right?
Two things. CIA came onto the scene and just started swinging.
Oh, they went big,
like
fast.
They went big, hard, and hard fast. Secondly, and I love saying this because, you have in all those crime shows, looks like they're stepping on the FBI's jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah. This is my crime scene.
Yeah.
Door kicks in. Pff, no.
This is my crime scene.
Detective Johnson, this is my scene.
My jurisdiction.
Actually, it's mine. Timothy Bolters. Step down, gentlemen. My God, it's Bolters. Anyway. So in response to the article, as you can imagine, I'm sure people are going, whoa, huge eyebrow lifts here.
Yeah.
But in response to this article, in 1975, President Gerald R. Ford commissioned investigations on the CIA, starting with the Rockefeller Commission, and followed by a more thorough investigation with the Church Committee. I want to say too, this is just me slipping on the tinfoil hat for a minute. We don't hear about the Rockefellers much anymore.
No.
These big name families, this big money center of a lot of industry names that are kind of at the heart of a lot of these nefarious conspiracies. Some of them more truth than conspiracy even. Maybe an episode in and of itself, but they've kind of all disappeared into the background.
I never hear anything about them anymore.
But yeah, these are big, powerful families that made their money on things like oil or other various industries throughout the 20th century, but I digress.
So the CIA is just going absolute feral mode. And so like the president now is like, I'm going to investigate you.
Essentially, yeah. This article comes out, alleges all this stuff about the CIA, and then President Ford says, "Oh, okay, let's look into this." Yeah,
that's a little nutty.
Yeah,
that like we're disjointed like that. Like,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Like, what? We formed you, and then you're going wild.
Yeah,
and so like I'm like off the rails, and now the president's like, I got to look into this. Like, what are you doing?
Checks and balances, baby. I appreciate it. I love to see it. Now I don't want it to have needed to happen.
Right.
But I feel like I grew up so sheltered that I'm like, the government, homogeny, synergy, it works together. But historically, even to this day, there are definitely times where the FBI, the executive branch, CIA, whatever, are all almost at each other's throats. And like my summer child attitude is like, oh man, no.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing because you want to make sure that all the pieces of the government
checking each other.
Exactly. But it also is kind of like it sucks that needs to happen.
I thought at most it'd be stepping on each other's toes.
Sure.
Like you see in crime
overreach.
shows. Yeah. Oh, you overreach.
Not why are you looking into our citizens this thoroughly? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. So in 1975, the church committee that I recently referenced uncovered a project called MKUltra. Now again, to reiterate, this was within the confines of investigating the CIA. So they uncovered this project called MKUltra, in which the CIA had been conducting experiments on human beings through the use of drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and much, much more. In January of 1973, all documents related to the MKUltra were ordered to be destroyed by CIA director at the time, Richard Helms. This was a result of the events of the Watergate scandal and fear that more information would be released. Because of all that going on in the political sphere, the CIA is like, let's burn our other dirty laundry to make sure we don't continue to be uncovered.
I just like when drug dealers get raided and then just start throwing drugs down the toilet. It's like the government just like, quick, burn everything.
Or it's like every episode of Cops when they're chasing somebody who's speeding down the highway and they start chucking paraphernalia out the window and you're like, come on, we see it.
Yeah, we see it.
We're pick that up.
We're just going to go grab it.
Right.
It's not going to dissolve within a matter of minutes.
Just disappears. So after a break-in, I'll just give you a brief synopsis here. After a break-in at the Democratic National Committee in 1972, it was revealed that the White House was involved and tried to cover it up, as well as wiretapping and other illegal activities to aid the re-election of President Richard Nixon. This led to Nixon resigning to avoid being fully properly impeached. Now, coming back to MKUltra, the remaining documents were discovered when all documents that could be related to MKUltra were obtained from a retired records center after a Freedom of Information Act request in 1977. Once again, the Freedom of Information Act comes in handy.
Yeah.
Just regular citizens, perhaps, reaching out saying, hey, because of this act, we're looking for this to be declassified or at least publicly made available. There, the last documents were found misfiled, and much of them are financially related, but they include important details such as the scope of the project, names of the people and institutions who worked on the project, which then allowed for deeper and further investigation into MKUltra. Some of the files included project proposals, some memos, things like that. Without this filing error, the extent to which we know about MKUltra would have been much more limited, and so it's due to this subtle clinical error that we know as much as we do know.
Ooh, somebody messed up big time.
Yeah, watch your post-it notes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's the stuff you see in cinema.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I feel like if this hasn't been made a movie, this is a movie in the making.
Right.
What was the other? There was another topic we covered that we said, this is absolutely a movie. We need Red Web Films out here. We are the movie podcast about mysteries. Red Web Films, a spin-off branch.
Just short stories.
But yeah, you're totally right. Some small error. But that also, while I'm grateful once again, I have this very conflicted feeling, because what does that then say about things we don't know? With proper clerical work, what's been hidden? Ugh.
You know, there's just like a mountain pile of things that the government's just like, thank God they don't know, or oh my God, could you imagine if they knew?
Oh yeah. It's just like, I mean, I don't know much about the financial world, if I'm honest, but it's just like 6 or 7 months ago, some financial institution, some brokerage was being investigated. And just about that time, their warehouse somewhere in the US burned down completely and thoroughly with all their paper backups. And I'm like, oh, good timing.
You know, the protective measures didn't work and everything just so happened to burn ever so brightly.
Oh, yeah. Just so these things happen. And that's where I go to bed at night going, Barbara, my partner, I go, Barbara, am I a conspiracy theorist, or is this world really scary? Is this just a dark, dark time?
There's so much unknown.
Yeah. So ultimately, these new documents coming to light led to Senate hearings that expanded on the previous investigations that happened in the earlier 70s. And so, like I said, now we have, to this day, a lot more knowledge. So during World War I, the US government believed that the Soviet Union was testing some sort of mind control, particularly with the drug LSD. And the CIA was aware that Nazi scientists were using mescaline, a drug similar to LSD, on victims in concentration camps in World War II. Like I said, this stuff gets very, very dark. MKUltra was led by chemists Sidney Gottlieb and his deputy Robert Lashbrook. Gottlieb believed that they could create a truth serum of sorts as an interrogation tool using the new experimental drug LSD. Remember, at this time, it wasn't a recreational drug purely. It was new. It was psychedelic in effects, heavy psychedelic effects, and it wasn't properly understood. And so governments everywhere were, for better or worse, poking at it.
Yeah.
What can it do?
Yep.
Can it get the truth out of people? Can it change their mind? What else?
I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Absolutely.
Obviously, they're going to want to take advantage of it. But at the same time, you'd want your government having full knowledge and understanding of this, just in case there was to be a mass exposure or an attack from a different country.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, double-edged, right?
Very double-edged. Very, very hairy stuff. But this ultimately led, funny enough, to the CIA purchasing all available LSD in the world at that time.
In the world?
As much as they could get their little hands on, their baby hands on.
But yeah, they're very tiny little mitts.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say in the country. That is, so I mean, I guess like at the same time, who cares? But then at that point, isn't there like some countries that are going to be like, no? And
I guess is it a buyer's market at that point?
Right.
I don't know.
That's true. It's like also where is it being sold and everything like that. It's just wild because it seems like such a mass purchase and also such like a public purchase.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it has to be public. It's also, and forgive my ignorance, those who know this arena a little bit better than me in the task force, but LSD is not a natural substance, much like you might hear of something like THC or opiates. It is purely synthetic. It is created in a lab. And so what they could do is set up relationships with labs across the world to create pipelines. Much like, again, looking at World War I and II, we took infrastructure and retooled it to make weapons and vehicles and things of that nature. So I'm sure that's kind of what happened. And so they could keep that off the books. Companies could look like pharmaceutical companies, but instead actually be doing this and just kind of cook their books and change the names. And no, we're making antibiotics or whatever. Wild stuff. But Gottlieb also believed that LSD itself could entirely erase the mind of an individual in order to implant a new one. We joke a lot about using movie analogies, but the perfect analogy is Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Using whatever tools necessary to wipe the mind, to rewire the brain to create a sleeper soldier, as it were.
That's
scary. And this was going down across the world, especially at this time.
Oh, yeah. It was just a race to figure out what this drug can do.
There are races that inspire progress in the scientific community, such as the space race. We want to get to the moon. We want to learn about the sun and the stars. And we created so much amazing invention by looking upward. And then there's races like this that inspire fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much progress we're making by doing this. It's
but then again, to go back to it's like, would you want your government to not know anything about it?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's so different. There's so many different ways and angles and everything.
Absolutely. It's
like
a knife's edge.
If enemy countries are researching the hell out of it, do you just go, no. It's unethical. Don't do it. But then it's just like, it's just
But then what if your enemy does?
Right.
At what point do you have to cross that threshold? And how? I don't know. Yeah, not for us to decide or weigh judgment on, but definitely that's what gives the sick feeling to this one.
Yeah.
But the CIA wanted to use LSD in the end and other drugs in espionage, spying on other countries and whatnot, getting intel information, especially with enemy captives. This project, as I mentioned, began in 1953, and under the MKUltra project umbrella, there were more than 150 research projects that were led across the United States, including at universities, many of which did not know the truth of the project that they were actually researching for. Enter the fire sale of Die Hard.
Yeah.
Whatever one that was. Where you basically take the truth, fraction it up a bunch, across a bunch of different scientific communities, let them tell you A, that party tells you B, a different party tells you C and D, and then some other cabal puts it all together and
and it's like you only have a fraction and you don't know much.
Mm-hmm. It's unclear exactly how many people were tested on since the CIA attempted to destroy most of MKUltra related documents when the program officially concluded in 1973. The full extent of the project is unknown due to the destruction of these documents, but more than 20,000 documents are available to this day. So that only raises the very, very obvious question, how many were destroyed? And if we know this much, how much do we not know?
20,000 documents. And that's just like what seems to be the smaller piece that survived.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. They're going at it.
This is a true iceberg. And I really want to know, but I also don't.
Right. Yep. 1,000%. Tell me, but don't.
Yeah. All right, so that's the background. Let's dive into some of the experiments. And I do want to reiterate, because now this is a true crime podcast. When you strap into Red Web, you're going to get into some sinister stuff sometimes. But every now and then we do stumble across some stuff that is particularly sinister and nefarious. And so again, I want to reiterate, there were some pretty gruesome human experiments that went down. And so I want to give that again here at the top as we dive into the experiments of Project MKUltra. Now, according to journalist Stephen Kinzer, Gottlieb's experiments to mind control were a process. Quote, first, you had to blast away the existing mind. Second, you had to find a way to insert a new mind into that resulting void. We didn't get too far on number 2, but he did a lot of work on number 1.
How do people even sign up for that? You tell them half-truths to like soldiers or citizens, and then you just it's all super unethical.
I think that's the point, and we're about to get there in the notes, but I'll jump right to it to answer your question, because that's the question that's been itching at the back of my mind. Because me, as a hopeful citizen, wants to know, you got sign-offs, you got NDAs, you got whatever permission slips from mom, but it really wasn't that way. These were unwitting subjects, such as prisoners. Patients in a psychiatric institute, for example, were a part of this. People who were struggling with drug addiction. Sometimes people were just pulled into this because of the unfortunate events of their lives. So these weren't willing or knowing subjects. That's the thing.
I mean, I knew it was going to be scummy no matter which way, but that's really bad.
Yeah. And of course you have, and this isn't any better, but enemy captives from other nations and stuff were also in some of these pools. But Gottlieb had very little supervision and had essentially free reign on these experiments. His supervisors were uninvolved to the nth degree, essentially, and some reportedly were just totally uninformed on Gottlieb's actions and what he was doing. There were no attempts to seek outside approval on his processes, and so in those circumstances, with this type of goal in mind, wiping and reinserting a new mind, you can imagine things would get very dark very quickly.
So I'm talking about, man, these buff scientists just doing way too many reps.
Listen, you're pushing the threshold and what's physically allowed.
Yeah, I mean, like this is under like the government. Imagine like people that just have the knowledge and resources and have no political ties.
Oh yeah, it actually brings to mind a case we discussed before, Bob Lazar. Definitely a different subject matter, but that's why when we talk about someone who comes to the table and says, hey, Area 51 is investigating UFOs, is investigating aliens. We do have technology that we've reversed engineered, and some of the things that they said were subsequently declassified after they gave detailed stories.
That was a good episode.
That's why I don't want to throw out stories like that with the bathwater, because things like this come to the table that are factually proven by released documents. And so that one is a little bit more kind of positive in a way. It's just kind of like, hey, there's aliens and futuristic technology, which gets my mind wondering. This, again, different topic.
Yeah.
But in May of 1953, Richard Helms held a staff meeting, which the Chief of Technical Services staff attended. During this meeting, Helms warned the agency of the dangers of LSD and required that he be contacted anytime that it was going to be used. CIA officer Frank Wisner sent a memorandum to the technical services, which would require approval of any use of LSD. So suddenly now I think we're going, hey, this
heavy
is
restrictions.
Yes. There's some wild stuff going on with this drug.
Yeah.
We need overhead approval.
Yep. Check your LSD at the door.
Absolutely. We need to know what you're doing with it, how you're doing with it, because this could go off the rails quickly. Gottlieb conducted the experiment without receiving these approvals from the technical services or director of plans. So now, not only was this person allowed to have free reign by their supervisors, but in the other sense, they just neglected any of the rails that they were given.
Yeah. It's like, no, there's no rules. Don't worry about it.
So with that said, knowing the setup for these experiments, let's talk about it. So one of the first experiments was done in Kentucky by the National Institute of Mental Health. Those being treated for addiction were offered the drug of their choice if they took part in these experiments.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Oh, let me reiterate, because I'm with you. Those being treated for addiction were offered the drug of their choice if they then signed up to take part in these experiments. Experiments that they didn't know about, what they meant, or what... They're bribing addicts with their vice.
Get ready for it, Christian. That's completely f***ed up.
It's very f***ed up, Christian.
Yep.
Like, not only are you giving it to them, but you're feeding back into their addiction as like payment?
Right.
That's just evil. That's what it is. That's evil.
It's evil. Now listen to this. One patient was kept high on LSD for 174 consecutive days.
Doesn't surprise me at this point.
Half a year. Over half a year.
Right. Because I'm sure they want to know the like limits of taking it. Sure. Right. How do you find that out? Right. Like if we just keep dosing an individual with LSD, what are the limits there?
Someone
what happens?
Oh my God.
Like how do they deteriorate? How so?
Right.
Like,
right. I think important questions if this is the route you want to take. But if I'm sitting in a dark room and someone's giving me a PowerPoint presentation or, whatever on this is what the plan is, my immediate response is, all right, so how are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Are you like, when do you want to do it to yourself? Because if it's your idea, I feel like you're the only one that knows what you're really saddled in for.
Yep.
You got to have the stomach for it, or you really need to declassify it. But anyway, 174 consecutive days, almost half a year. Now, some people volunteered for the tests, okay? Thankfully, there is some volunteering happening, but what do
they know?
Exactly. To what extent do they know what's really going on? You have Whitey Bulger, who we've talked about before in the Gardner Museum heist episode. He was given LSD every day for over a year, believing that it was being used to find a cure for schizophrenia. So he's being misled, hence the volunteering.
Man,
all
of this is so bad.
Terrible. Military personnel and CIA employees themselves were also given the drug, sometimes without their consent, while others were more voluntary in nature. The CIA wanted to see what would happen when someone who didn't know that they had been given the drug in a normal setting had it outside of the lab.
Right, because you also want to test like placebo effects and
absolutely.
I mean, you're messing with the mind, right? Wiping it, rewiring it. If someone knows then they're more aware of what's happening, at least to some extent, right? They're like,
Absolutely.
I'm taking something. It's going to do something to me.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone just going, another
I'm
day,
not
another
looking
me.
for it. I just drank out of the water fountain. What am I thinking? I'm hydrated now. I feel good. Yeah. Placebo effect is wild. I love the idea of the placebo effect, but it's also like, I'll use a less sinister one. There's an example that I read about a few years ago where people were all kind of kept apart from one another, but they just lived their normal daily lives and they were just monitored. Group A exercised more thoroughly with a regimented schedule and diet. Group B didn't do anything different. They just documented what they ate and tried to maybe eat a little bit better, but they didn't do any exercise. They just lived. Group C, this is where I start to get off a little bit, but Group C allowed the placebo effect in by spending time every day thinking about working out. They didn't work out, they didn't change how they lived, but they thought about working out and literally imagined their body working out. And there was actually
That's an interesting group.
That group landed somewhere between the workout group and the baseline group. And so that's a little bit more of an active placebo versus a sugar pill.
Right.
But there are some very powerful placebo results out there.
Yeah.
And I'm so fascinated by that.
It's so interesting, and it's such a fun deep dive. And the things that actually work out just out of placebo effects are things you just go, how is that possible?
So before I get back into the notes, this is where, and I'm definitely jumping the gun. I'm sure this is in here because Jillian is very thorough, and Gracie as well. But this is where the idea of the public comes into play, and why this was a theory with Mothman is because not only did they do this with the CIA, but I think they also did this with the general public. And this is now the Mothman theory is like, did it not happen? We knew it happened in the CIA, so maybe it happened with the populace.
Either way, pin Mothman on the board.
Stick him back on the board. He's connected to more cases.
He's probably
now.
on there already.
Yeah, he's always been.
just re-stick another one.
Always has been. Just, you know what? Put another Mothman next to that Mothman. Thank you. But yeah. Anyway, let's dive back in. So some CIA employees would also take the LSD themselves, knowing that they were taking this, and fellow employees would then observe and take notes on maybe the general change in demeanor or activities or behavior. In a sub-project entitled Operation Midnight Climax, which I'm sure is way less sexy than it is or sounds.
Come on, someone knew what they were doing with that one.
Oh yeah, someone smiled when they wrote that down. The idea of the test subject being unaware of the experiment grew much more elaborate. The CIA created safe houses in San Francisco, California. Fredo, you got something to answer for here.
What?
Your old stomping ground. Way before you and me.
All right, there we go.
You're clear. For now. So the CIA created safe houses in SF over there in California to conduct these experiments with hidden two-way mirrors to monitor the results. You gotta know if you're in a mysterious room with a mirror on it, someone's on the other side watching.
Yeah, you know what scares me? Mirrors in hotels.
Touch mirrors. I'm telling you right now, touch a mirror. Every time I do this, I know it's silly, but it takes 2 seconds. Anytime I go to a hotel or a changing room or anything, touch the mirror. Look at your reflection. If you can touch fingerprint to fingerprint like you can with your fingertips, if they touch, there's a high chance that it's a two-way mirror. But if you touch a normal mirror,
and it doesn't touch each other,
it'll be a good mirror.
Very close.
Yeah, it'll be very close if it's a cheap mirror. If it's a solid mirror, like at your house, probably it'll be like maybe half a centimeter, probably actually. That's an easy way to check.
Yeah, I do that, like that. just in case.
I take a hammer to him. And then I say, you got my card. I'm very unlucky.
That's what the card on file is for.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a gift card. It's got $25, but it's on deck.
Man checks in with, he puts the card and the hammer on the counter. No, don't worry about that. That's for me. Here's what you need.
I'm a general contractor, generally speaking. So coming back to it now, and there's actually a reason for Operation Midnight Climax being the name. And this is where I tip my hand and reveal, obviously, that I've been reacting alongside you this episode. But the way this works and the reason why it had this name is the CIA created these safe houses, like I mentioned. But what they also did was they hired sex workers to operate essentially out of these safe houses. The sex workers would bring their clients to these safe houses, and then the experimenters would give these clients the LSD. And so these clients of the sex workers would be unknowingly dosed with these LSD doses, and they would be the ones observed.
So wait,
kind of like a honeypot in a really twisted way.
Yeah. So LSD is what, in liquid form, I'm assuming?
Yes. Usually it's like soaked into like a paper, and that's what tabs are when you see that in movies.
Okay.
But yes, it's otherwise.
And I'm sure other ways, just like a little dropper or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just, how are they secretly dosing them?
That's a really good question. Now, you could put it in water. Is commonly what happens. It's not like you're injecting somebody. Now, the spooky thing
what to do with the CIA.
Yeah. Now, the spooky thing about LSD, and I read about this in an article probably a decade ago, and the reason why people put it in the tabs and paper is because it keeps it locked and it keeps it less volatile, as it were. Because I read a story about some gentleman, I don't know what the situation was, but he had a little vial of it in his pocket or something, and it smashed. And the way LSD works is it can absorb, its bioavailability is, it can go through your skin. Yeah. And so he had a massive overdose and trip. I don't know if he made it or not. Unfortunately, I don't remember. But that's what I've always remembered that.
That is a very interesting little tidbit.
Mm-hmm. And so it could be as simple as like something akin to a nicotine patch where something is placed on them. But also, again, in these environments, these are unsuspecting people. And if they are working with a sex worker, and that this is a person that they're trusting, that person could give them something, whether it be a drink or a substance or whatever. So I don't really know for sure. Christian, do we know if we know how this was actually given to people?
No, not from what we could see. Okay. It was just that the sex workers brought clients back to the safe houses and, somehow
the
drugged
clients.
them.
Yeah. Okay.
Oof.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Operation Midnight Climax. Now, jumping country actually, an unknown amount of experiments funded under MKUltra happened in Canada, including Sub-Project 68 at the Allen Memorial Institute of Montreal by Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron. There is sadly even less information available on what became known as the Montreal experiments, but we do know that something happened in Montreal. Probably sinister in nature to the subversion, the lies and manipulation that happened there in San Francisco.
Yeah, none of this was done in a good way.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no.
There's definitely like deception and smoke and mirrors going on.
Very much so. And taking advantage of people and taking advantage of trust and, oh boy. Now, in the process of what became known as de-patterning, Cameron attempted to wipe the minds of patients similar to Gottlieb. So this de-patterning included electroshock therapy, terrible stuff. I'm sure we've seen it in pop culture all over the place, but also sensory deprivation, covering the ears, the skin, the eyes, essentially removing any sensory input, and using sleep rooms where patients were put into medically induced comas through the use of hallucinogenic drugs. Another technique actually was called psychic driving, where messages were repeatedly played as patients slept against their will.
Ugh.
Sounds very, very familiar to very known methods of torture, to say the least. I mean, repeated sounds and songs and phrases, enough to drive anybody
it just,
bonkers.
At this point, anyone that's involved in the experiments in any way, shape, or form is just in a world of hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
I thought you were going to say the other side. Anyone involved in hosting these experiments, morally corrupt, ethically rot.
Oh, yeah. Every which way.
Oh, yeah. Now, an example of this, because again, we're really trying to, in our research, find at least the sure path of fact between fiction here. And yes, there are declassified documents, but there is a very strong example of this happening. The family of victim Esther Schreier came forward with her story as someone who was de-patterned when she simply attempted to seek help for her postpartum depression after being pregnant with her son, Lloyd. So here you have a very unfortunate example of somebody who was going through something very normal, seeking help for that, and instead found herself in a de-patterning experiment after her pregnancy.
And the messed up thing is, I'm sure they went, oh, this will be a fascinating subject.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure they're like perfect.
Right. We don't have many test subjects that have come from like fresh out of a pregnancy.
You're totally right. I'm sure you are, which is grotesque. Yeah. Ultimately, even less information is available on the detention centers in Japan, Germany, the Philippines, and other countries around the world where the CIA experimented with LSD and sensory deprivation on people being held for interrogation. With this in mind, it could be fair to assume that these governments were not involved or even aware of these activities taking place. I do want to say that at least.
Yeah.
Finally, in 1963, man, they like these years with the threes, Gottlieb decided that mind control wasn't possible after a decade of trying to wipe and reinstate new mindsets into people. That same year, a member of the CIA Inspector General's staff, John Vance, discovered MKUltra, and testing on unwitting victims ceased. We know that this went on for another 10 years, so that's interesting.
So they just went deeper underground?
I'm trying not to spoil the outline. The project did manage to continue in certain ways.
God. I mean, for a second there, I had a glimmer of hope. I mean, still 10 years of terribleness, but all right. So it seems like, another 10 years of going the basement below the basement.
Right.
So the continuation of MKUltra became a new project. They didn't even try to hide it. MK Search.
Wait, what?
They have a new project now to basically Indiana Jones, the sandbag and the golden statue. MKUltra's out. MK Search is the new project name.
Just were they too lazy to rename all the files?
I guess. I don't know. So MK Search had two sub-projects, MK Often and MK Chickwit. MK Often dealt with, quote, testing the toxicological, transmissivity, and behavioral effects of drugs in animals and ultimately humans. I nailed those pronunciations.
Yeah, you
First
did.
time.
Damn.
I've never been smarter. And then MK Chickwit, very interesting name, was, quote, concerned with acquiring information on new drug developments in Europe and Asia and with acquiring samples. Acquiring new drug information on new drug developments in different continents. Seems like basically taking this show on the road, but with new and maybe, air quotes, improved drugs.
It sounds like it's gearing up to be much worse.
It does.
To be honest,
It sounds like they're
completely real.
It sounds like they need to decentralize is what they're thinking. We need to scatter this nefarious activity across the globe and go harder, faster.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. Ultimately, MK Search, again, that new name for MKUltra, had its funding ended in 1971, 2 years prior to the entire project itself ending, like I mentioned, in 1973. Well, hello, Task Force. Allow me to pause the MKUltra density. Man, this was a dense one, but a juicy one. I thought I knew MKUltra until we got into the research, and this one is fantastic. Hey, it's me, Trevor Collins, as always, talking to you directly in this little brief moment of levity in the mix of the mystery at hand. For those who continue to outpour their love by way of supporting us with the reviews and just chatting with us on social and staying engaged and talking with us, being an active member of the task force, thank you so much. With that said, I have some fantastic sponsors for today. This episode of Red Web is brought to you by Rocket Money. Everything is a subscription service these days, and that means a lot of us are paying for subscriptions we don't even remember we have. With Rocket Money, you can change that with a few quick taps. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about, like that free trial that you never even used and then totally forgot about, and then it started re-upping and now you're paying for it. But that's where Rocket Money comes in. Rocket Money quickly and easily identifies your subscriptions. All you got to do is find the subscription you don't want and press cancel, and Rocket Money cancels it for you. Fredo, I know you've been using this. Tell me about it.
So, I mean, the appealing thing to me, of course, is the subscription stuff. And it made me realize that I had about $60 worth of subscriptions that I don't use anymore.
Dang.
One of them being Tidal, which is like a music app. That being said, it went further than that for me. Like I have my bank account, and then I have multiple credit cards, and it was able to kind of consolidate all that information in one location. And I get these emails like every week telling me, hey, you spent $500 more on food this week than you did last week. And I'm like, why did I do that?
And then you can make adjustments.
And I make adjustments, and it allows me to actually it's just very simple for me to see how much I'm spending in what category across so many different accounts, and then also make the needed adjustments. So it's like valuable information that just gets sent to me like every week. I look at it and I go, awesome, spending too much on food. Let's like tone that down. So yeah, it's been fun.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that convenience. Super easy, like Freda was saying. So stop throwing your money away, cancel those unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/redweb. That's rocketmoney.com/redweb. And one more time for you, rocketmoney.com/redweb. This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by Shady Rays. New year, new gear, particularly gear that's built to last. Whether you're in the sun or on the slopes, our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with the premium polarized shades, customizable snow goggles, and even more. Shady Rays is an independent company that offers a durable, world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair out there. Plus, they have an amazing protection plan. They back every pair of sunglasses with lost and broken replacements, so if you lose or break yours, even if it's the first day that you bought them, if you're out there hunting for Bigfoot, you trip on a rock, or maybe Bigfoot kicks you with his giant toe and breaks your glasses, they'll send you a new pair. No questions asked. You don't have to validate the existence of a Bigfoot. They're not even going to ask. And if you don't absolutely love your pair, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. Of course, I love Shady Rays. I love the fact that they're all polarized. That's my favorite type of lenses, especially when you're out in the sun. If you're on the water, it helps prevent all of the glare coming off of the water. And I love to go on my walks. You know, I've talked about that before. I go on my walks or my runs and I listen to music and I put on these Shady Rays because it prevents the sun here in Texas from beating down on my sensitive little corneas. And I really enjoy the fact that they have modern styles. So no matter what you're wearing, what your style is, they have something for you. So I really appreciate that part too. Exclusively for you, Task Force members, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the new year. Go to shadyrays.com, use code REDWEB, and you'll get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Once again, that's shadyrays.com. Use code REDWEB for 50% off 2 or more pairs. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 200,000 people. And with that, let's dive right back into the mystery. So with some of the specific experiments discussed, we're going to talk now about a man named Frank Olson. Throughout the many MKUltra experiments, there was at least one confirmed death of a test subject. The victim was 43-year-old Frank Olson, a scientist and CIA officer involved in MKUltra. Olson had a PhD in bacteriology and previously had been involved in developing biological weapons that could be spread through the air, such as anthrax.
Yep. Okay.
Oh man, yeah. I don't like where this is going.
I mean, that's the kind of people the project would like attract. You know what I mean? Like, who else would you get?
Not only to understand it and study it, but oh God, do I have to say it? Weaponize it.
Weaponize it. Yep. 100%. We're gonna try to weaponize the hell out of everything.
Oh boy.
Humans in general.
Yeah. Aerosolize it, you know?
Yep.
All right. So his son, Eric, said that Olson was emotionally affected by the positive results of his work since it resulted in the death of lab animals. He even suffered from ulcers as a result from the stress. Olson and others drank a beverage laced with LSD, so there you go. There was one of the ways that it was commonly taken.
Yep.
But Olson, like I said, and many others drank a beverage laced with LSD during a CIA team retreat in Maryland on November 18th through 20th in 1953. So this was at the very top.
Wow. Okay.
Olson was not aware at the time that he had been given LSD, so there you go. Though,
the wild thing is Olson seems like a valuable piece of the team.
It does seem like a valuable piece.
Just you know, the vague outside looking in.
Yeah.
And yet this person is also secretly being dosed.
Right. Here's our scientific foundation for experiments. Let's go ahead and scramble their brains. Like
what?
This unsupervised churlish activity, wild.
It was a crazy episode.
I'm gobsmacked. I'm trying to read the next line and I'm just like taking this in. This is, like I said, I wanted to, like Christian and Jillian did a lot of extra effort on this particular one. And I thought that this would be a good opportunity because I'm like, I feel like I know MKUltra.
Right.
No. Christian was like, no. This is wide and deep.
It is dense. There's a lot there.
There's just no rules.
No rules.
They're like,
they're firing from the hip in the most chaotic way.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they're after now.
Right.
They're going after their main guy, it almost sounds like, to your point, Fred. All right. So let's get back to it. November 8th to 20th, there's a retreat. Now, you wouldn't suspect that when you're working with a drug of some kind, that you are going to be the next subject or the first subject. But man, I don't know, like if scientists, buff scientists all around the world are working on some stuff, but it just maybe keep your back against the wall. I don't know. I'm not trying to get you all scared or whatever, but like,
I don't know,
this guy became center to his own thing.
Right.
Okay. Now, it is worth mentioning, and I do appreciate that this is in here. Some sources do claim that they were informed about 20 minutes after the fact. Okay.
So they weren't. Come on. It wasn't even. I thought it was like, oh, okay, they were informed 20 minutes before.
That's what I was hoping. And I read the sentence and I reacted in the moment. But now other sources say otherwise. So
either way, it sucks.
Either way, it's a total blindside. You don't tell me, hey, you just gobbled up 2 doses of LSD. I'll be like, son, what?
Yeah.
That's enough for it to absorb. I can't punching bag my uvula enough to get this out of my stomach.
Start shadowboxing the hell out of it. I mean, like, look, that, whether it's true or not, does not contest the fact that they were given it without knowing.
No.
Like, prior.
Now that's legit scare right there. Now, when Olson came back home that weekend, he was very quiet, and his wife reported that he claimed he had, quote, made a very grave mistake. Other odd behaviors included him being very jittery, distracted, having trouble sleeping, and concentrating. Supposedly the effects were so strong, he even forgot how to spell. That's gnarly.
Like, really thinking about it, right? Yes, we've been talking about the experiment, how they experiment, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, they're testing out like how much they can give someone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They're pushing
on their own scientists.
Yeah.
The folks behind these are their guys.
I just don't understand what the motive is behind that.
I really don't know.
And we'll never know.
And I go back to the cynical checking the boxes that you mentioned. Like, oh, we don't have a intelligent science guy. We don't have an administrator. Like, they're trying to just see what it does to all caliber of demographic.
I mean, I guess motive there is just like, if it's messing with the mind of someone that is like very hyper aware of this and how it works and how it acts, and like, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Having someone being dosed that has extensive knowledge of it. Like, that's the only thing I can think of.
This brings something to mind, and this is just Trevor speaking. There's nothing in the notes. This is just me being candid. We are in 2023. There are a lot of emerging studies around all sorts of drugs, LSD included. I'm not here, just by the way, for anybody who might be knee-jerk reacting, I'm not here to vilify any sort of drug or whatever. What's happening here are doses that we don't even know about. Nothing in doses of this caliber is healthy. That is the definition of too much.
Yeah.
You can have too much water, okay?
Yeah.
So like, I just want to pause because something came to mind. We're not trying to vilify any of the subject matter that we're talking about here. There are emerging studies around things like psilocybin and how it can help with depression and PTSD and all sorts of things. So just something that came to mind. I just wanted to say that while I'm here in the moment. But again, we're working with doses that are experimental and beyond necessary. You know what I mean?
And against people's will.
Oh, exactly.
Or they're not informed.
So I just want to spell that. I just wanted to mention
there's
that.
a big difference.
Yeah. But yeah, let's get back to Dr. Olson here. So he got to the point where he couldn't even spell. My God. But after returning to work on Monday, this is after the retreat, Olson attempted to quit his job. Good on him. And when he was asked why, he said, quote, he was experiencing considerable self-doubt. Interesting, but a symptom someone's probably scribbling down in a pamphlet somewhere. Olson's supervisor, Vincent Ruitt, I love that we have the names.
Yeah.
Vincent Ruitt advised Olson to visit a CIA psychiatrist in New York, which he did with Ruitt and previously mentioned CIA chemist Robert Lashbrook. They all went to New York to see this psychiatrist. Lashbrook was also at the retreat and was also laced with the drinks of LSD with Gottlieb's supervision. So Lashbrook, for what it's worth, was also at the retreat with everybody, and he is the one that laced the drinks with LSD with Gottlieb's supervision. So now you have Dr. Olson, by his supervisor's recommendation, seeing a New York psychiatrist. So he goes there with his supervisor and the guy that laced the drinks. They're all heading to New York.
That is a
conflict of interest.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
What a mixture.
Oh, yeah. Now get this. Let's mix it up even more. Let's stir that pot.
Why is he coming along?
Why is he coming? And also this. Imagine our trust should be shattered by this point. The psychiatrist,
oh, of course, this doesn't surprise me.
the supposed psychiatrist here in New York, was actually an allergist involved with the MKUltra project, Dr. Harold Abramson. It was unclear as to whether Olson was purposely misled about Abramson's true occupation or whether it was simply miscommunication. Though my personal opinion, based on everything I've known or read just here, feels like another lie.
All right.
Lies beget lies.
I was expecting that he was going to get dosed with LSD again. I wasn't expecting
Hair of the dog kind of
that the doctor wasn't really the doctor specifically used. Like, what did he do? Like, hey, we're on our way. Take down the like picture frames of all the cats and dogs and like fields of grass.
Yeah.
In the allergen office. Like, I mean, come on, right? Like the office. I went to an allergy office. They have stuff there. It's like, oh, look, it's cute, but you get allergic to it. And like, not anymore. Not with allergy shots.
Wow, this is the most stark and spooky allergist office ever. Where's that little scratch device? That, you know,
that's what I'm just saying. They have to like change it in some way.
Where's the waiting room?
There's a ton of. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that talked about like you go to a doctor's office. There's a ton of stuff up.
Yeah,
I'm sure they have to de-dress it in some way, shape, or form.
Oh yeah. Now get this. I'm gonna say this, and Fredo, I want that gut reaction. I know what you're gonna say, but I need to hear it because I'm gonna give you another piece of information, and I think it will color in the open-ended question. Again, the question being, was Olson purposely misled about the true occupation of Abramson, or was it a miscommunication? Let's just say this. Abramson was the physically closest in all of the nation, in all of the world. He was the employee for MKUltra that was physically closest, who also had the knowledge of both LSD's effects on people as well as MKUltra. So basically saying he's the most convenient person with the right knowledge of the project, the drug, and he's the closest person with all that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now tell me, was he misled or was this a miscommunication? What do you think anyway? Because again, we don't know.
I mean, look, we don't know.
But come on.
That's a mislead. I mean, like, like you don't go to a basketball game and go, "Oh, is this really basketball?" Like, it's
right.
like the court is there, the teams are going back and forth. It's 5v5. They're shooting balls into the net. Like, it's basketball,
you don't
baby.
Take me to the nearest basketball court and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought this was going to be football."
Right. Good old pigskin.
God, man,
you don't want to assume, but
this is what I'm saying.
It's hard not to.
Let this be the worst, like, analogy for life possible, because this is 1953. These are some sincere and severe red flags coming up at the top of the game before 20 years of MKUltra. Task Force, let's turn this into a life lesson. You picture red flags of any caliber, of any part of your life, whether it be lies and deceit or just something smells weird, like the deli meat I shouldn't have had the other day. Like,
oh no.
Listen to that red flag and get out. Okay, so Olson now. This is all happening in essentially a week-long span here in November.
That's a rough week.
Olson returned home for Thanksgiving. The next day, November 27, he called his wife to say he was feeling better. Lashbrook said Olson, quote, was cheerful and appeared to enjoy the entertainment, and, quote, appeared no longer particularly depressed and almost the Dr. Olson I knew prior to the experiment, end quote.
At this point, I would not be surprised. It would not blow my mind if you were like, and the chef was a part of Project MKUltra and doused the turkey with LSD.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The family's personal chef.
Come on, man. Like, this is so... that in itself, like if that were to be placed into your outline, would not blow my mind. That's how absurd this whole thing is.
Let's make it worse.
What the hell you mean make it worse?
Let's make it worse.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm reacting with you. Gut instincts all the way.
Okay.
But I've glimpsed the next line and it gets dark. So let me take you back a second. And remember, we're talking about Lashbrook, the man who was on the retreat, the man that accompanied Olson up to New York, the man that laced the drinks, the man who is now telling the wife that Olson is fine. Everything's good. In fact, he seems better than ever. He seems like his normal self. Well, very unfortunately, on November 28th, 1953, that night, essentially, at 2 a.m., in fact, Olson, quote, fell. I'm saying quotes because it's ambiguous, but fell 13 stories from his hotel window at the Hotel Statler. The doorman of the hotel found Olson's body and told the night manager, who contacted law enforcement. Olson was accompanied by Lashbrook, who police found seated on the toilet with his head buried in his hands. Lashbrook claimed that he had been sleeping and woke up when he heard a noise. The night manager...
Like, sleeping on the toilet?
I don't know if he was sleeping on the toilet, but that's how he was found.
Yeah, he was sleeping. They were sharing a room in separate beds. He was sleeping in bed, and then they found him on the toilet, not like using the bathroom, but sitting on the toilet in the bathroom, head in hands.
Oh, okay. Just like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Right. So the night manager looked into the call history coming from Olson's hotel room and found that someone in the room had called Dr. Harold Abramson, the very doctor, the allergist, or air quotes, psychiatrist that they had seen in New York. The caller from the room stated, quote, "Well, he's gone." And Abramson replied, quote, "Well, that's too bad."
I mean, look, it's like, they're not even, it's just so messy. It's so messy out in the open. It's like, you're just like, look, man, he fell down a flight of stairs onto some bullets. You know,
Dude,
like,
yeah.
it's just so obvious.
Right.
That it feels like, oh man.
We've covered some dark stuff.
That's just blindsiding.
But
that's just blindsiding and manipulation.
Absolutely. And knowing, oh man, this is just like heavy.
Yeah.
An unwitting, unknowing victim through and through. Of course, you know, I do have to say, like, or I do want to say, like, we don't know everything that we don't know, but this is not a good line of facts.
Yeah.
What we do know.
Right.
It's not looking good for these three individuals here, nor the project at large.
No, I mean,
goodness.
The next question is like, what happens to them? Did they just get slapped on the wrist? Did nothing happen? Like,
we'll dive into that, but I also want to say, or ask Christian, 1963 was when this kind of bubbled up a little bit and got, hey, we can't be doing this anymore, right?
Yeah, 1963 was when it was all of the non-consensual drugging was discovered and essentially shut down, but the project did continue for the next decade.
So this piece in particular, not that this is this is bad. It's all bad. But was this known about at that 63 junction, or was this not known about until maybe the 70s junction? Or is that hard to say with the resources we have?
With what we were able to find, I don't know if it was found out about. And in 1963, it was not publicly revealed that it was discovered.
Yeah. All I'm after there is, you know, the sinister nature it takes for a person to, with the knowledge of 10 years of this stuff, to, now let's keep going, go harder, and obfuscate it further.
Right. I mean, every like piece
twisted.
of it just seems like, I mean, at this point, it really does seem like, I forgot the victim's name. Unfortunately,
Dr. Olson.
So at this point,
there's been a lot of names. Don't worry. Yeah.
At this point, it seems like Dr. Olson wanted out, and they just didn't want to let that happen the easy way.
That, or they encouraged it for silence. Those are the little pieces that we will never know, perhaps. Yep. But Olson was buried 3 days after his death in a sealed casket. Olson's family knew little detail about the nature of his death. All they were told was that Olson had either fallen or jumped to his death. That's all they knew. Because of the sealed casket, they were not able to view the body either. Now, we're going to flash way forward back into the 70s. In 1975, when the Rockefeller Commission released their report investigating illegal CIA activity, the Olson family finally, and this I guess answers my question, Christian, finally got some answers about Frank's mysterious death. The document references an unnamed individual that died as a result of drug testing in 1953. So the document itself is a bit ambiguous, perhaps even redacted, but when you connect the dots, especially with the knowledge the family had, it's pretty clear. Yeah, it's pretty clear. In fact, this is, to reiterate, the only death we can definitely and knowingly pin to this entire program.
Oh, that is surprising.
It's surprising that it continued after this point. This is the beginning of 20 years of this project.
Well, they're already like off the rails at this point. Like, how do you even stop?
Right.
They're just unethical to the 10th degree.
So the Army's involved now. The Army consulted the CIA and confirmed that the unnamed individual was in fact Frank Olson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, we know now, but,
yeah.
But this is kind of how it unfolded in the 70s. A colleague of Olson's contacted the family to inform them to basically confirm it all to give at least the family some closure. They didn't have to assume anymore. They knew. The Olson family received a personal apology from President Gerald Ford and were offered a $750,000 settlement to not file a claim against the U.S. government. In today's dollars, using inflation and whatnot, this would amount to about $4 million in USD currency. I don't know if, and this is just, again, me speaking personally, this is my opinion, I don't know if any amount of money could properly settle that in any way. And in fact, especially given the nature of this whole program, again, with hindsight, again, with all this research now well known, I'd be going after the government. I'm sorry. I'm making a public stand. I got to blow this up personally.
Yeah, that is the right thing to do. You also got to take a look at the angles, right? Maybe he would have wanted his family to be just not involved with any of that, right?
Right. That's true.
Everything that comes with that, the public eye, the harassment, the
level of people you would be dealing with at that time.
Exactly.
I mean,
and it's like, look, there's you can have multiple opinions. I'm not saying this is my opinion,
sure.
But it could be a father just like, look, you don't want to get involved with these people. Obviously, the right thing to do is the right thing to do, but take the money and just
let it rest.
Let it live out a good life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so many different
miles away from
right.
it.
Exactly.
I can imagine
there's so many different ways
point.
You can spin it.
Absolutely. No, that's a very good point, especially, being the parents of a family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But even more cynically, I'm just like, first of all, it's not the entire government. It's clearly a section of bad actors operating without supervision or breaking rules, doing dark deeds, etc. across the globe. No parameters or dodging parameters.
Yeah.
And then additionally, you have to imagine, right? If they're willing to do these kind of things, what else are they willing to do? Do you go after that? Do you put yourself in harm's way in a sense? I don't know.
I mean, the more I think about it, it's like I wouldn't want my family to be on that map.
That's a great point.
I just wouldn't. Right.
If it was
I'm
me
sorry.
alone, I'll go out. I'll go out there and scream about it. But
just like your family, your wife, your kids to be put on that map, that's so dangerous.
Yep.
If I was just me by myself, or it was I don't know.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't poke that dragon, essentially. Well, the CIA still denies that there was any foul play in Frank Olson's death.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Though his family, particularly his son Eric, who we talked about a little bit briefly before, believe his death was defenestration, i.e. he was pushed out or thrown out the window. Again, we don't know the facts and everything. I do want to try to be, there's our opinions and then there's objectivity.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit here and cast blame. We just have heightened opinions and feelings here. But feelings aside, his sons Eric and Nils exhumed their father's body, actually, in 1994 and requested a second autopsy, which raised suspicions about the real cause of death. Fascinating.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff it's just in, the episodes that we shoot. I go, man, that would be cool if that's what happened. This is actually, what happened.
Yeah. So law and forensic science professor James E. Starrs coming after that tangible evidence that we love. Now, he found it strange that the body did not have any cuts that would have occurred with falling through a glass window. So the way I was picturing this, and Christian
I pictured it as the window was open.
I pictured it as a window open or a balcony. But Christian, it sounds like this body went through a glass window that then shattered, and Olson then continued to their death, i.e. looking for the cuts.
So it sounds to me that the actual scene of the crime, the glass is shattered. And at that point, that's why the autopsy,
you would imagine
it should come through as there's cuts, because you don't just dive through a window without
right.
Without
Absolutely
cut up.
not. No. God, and it takes a lot of force to break a window like that. 13 stories up.
So then the theory here is, and again, that the glass was broken, popped, and then he went out the window.
It's a very good theory. And I don't know the nature of this window, if it does open or doesn't open, but I think we should leave it to Starrs here, because Starrs, puzzled by his findings, told the press this, quote, "It's not inconceivable that someone could have broken the window after he went through to make it appear as if he had gone through the window as a crazy person would." Again, quoting him here. "I'm skeptical that anyone could clear a radiator, a 31-inch high windowsill, pass through a 3 by 5 foot window opening obscured by a drawn shade, all in the darkness of a hotel room at night.
I mean, who's to say though that the lights weren't on and the shade was drawn? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of goes into a lot of imagination there, surprisingly.
Yeah, I'm just reading through this. That quote that someone could have broken the window after he went through to make it appear as though he had gone through a window.
Based on...
So, like, is he saying it was opened and then the deed happened and then it was closed and shattered?
Yeah. So from what we could find, the official version of events is that the window was closed at the time that he went through it.
Got it.
So what Stars is saying is that, entertaining the conspiracy theory side of it is that he could have been killed, thrown out of an open window, closed the window, and then broken it after the fact to help, like, obfuscate the evidence.
Yeah, because to his point too, now this window starts 31 inches high, just shy of about 3 feet, so 2.5 feet-ish. It's a 3 foot by 5 foot window. Okay, it's got a radiator. That doesn't come off the wall too far, but you would have to have some speed and determination to essentially dive at the window to make this happen.
That just seems so unnecessary, though.
Yeah, like
just say the window was open and he went out the window.
Right. If the intent was to commit self-harm.
Right.
To your point, would you just open the window? Gosh.
This is such a deep episode.
I'm really just trying to wrap my brain around this too. And man, my instinct just wishes maybe someone was awake at this time. I know it's 2 a.m., but that someone was around to hear it, because if this potential theory holds water, one would imagine that the body would have probably hit the ground before the window would have even shattered. Because if he was killed, thrown, closed, shattered, it would take a bit of time or heavy premeditation to get the sound of the fall and the sound of the glass to get close.
Line up or
Goodness, that's wow. I want to know more about this exhumed autopsy. The team also found, here we are. The team also found blows to Olson's head that occurred before death. The way I imagine you could tell that is if the body would have time to bruise or something of that nature. I don't know. He's a professional. I'm sure he could tell.
Right.
The autopsy itself determined that the cause of death was inconclusive due to the circumstances. But that one piece there, it sounds like Olson took some blows to the head before death occurred, i.e. prior to the fall.
I mean, my brain goes real deep and dark with it, but that he took blows to the head and was thrown out the window. And then I'm assuming the overall hope was, the places where he was bruised be shattered on the pavement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then either way, there's if not, closed casket, we don't look at it.
Right. And at this point, something I should have felt already by this point, Occam's razor, right? Knowing the rest of what happened over the course of the next 2 decades, it's like, would we be surprised if this was a sinister deed? I don't know. I don't think we would be. Additionally, I think we can go ahead and back up even further and say, I don't know Dr. Olson, and I imagine the family would have known him quite well. I can't speak to self-harm and suicide, but just knowing the symptoms that his colleagues saw after the LSD administration, the jitteriness, the distraction, the trouble sleeping, the trouble concentration, the fact that he couldn't even spell, and the fact that this lingered hard enough that he's like, I need to leave, I need to quit. That enough is enough to put him in the wrong headspace. That enough could be a key indicator here anyway. And so it still comes back to the same parties.
Yeah.
It still comes back to the same few people at the cause.
Yeah.
So it's almost like splitting hairs. Either way, we're dealing with some, in my opinion, again, very sinister people.
Yeah. Whether it was
intended or not.
Right. Whether it was handheld, there were, there's kind of like 2 lanes, right? They handheld to that direction, down that path, or they were the inception of it. Yeah.
Again, and I don't mean this in jest, but to use pop culture references, it's very House of Cards like, if you've seen that series.
Yep.
Anyway, to close out here, some believe that due to Olson's deep knowledge of many secret projects and growing frustrations, he tried to quit. He was murdered because he was considered a security threat, that he could leak this project before it even had its legs under it, right? This was 1953, before what amounted to be 2 decades worth of sinister research. His knowledge of MKUltra and the fact that he had the highest clearance level available in the CIA could have made him a threat. Perhaps after being drugged with LSD, Olson spoke openly about the projects he had been involved in. Some believe that as someone who studied biological weapons, Olson would have had knowledge whether or not the U.S. used those weapons in, for example, the Korean War. That perhaps that not only would this project be at threat, but deeper sins of the nation could be opened, deeper wounds that we maybe don't even know about today could have been opened. The U.S. government has denied all accusations of using bacteriological warfare, though there are still debates on this to this day. Things that I can't speak to, I don't know anything about, I admit. But if it were true, someone like Olson would be the person that would know, given his tenure, his experience, and his position at that time. But with that said, that brings us to a close on Project MKUltra. We have knowledge that many documents are forever missing from this project. It's unlikely that we'll ever uncover the full truth of what Project MKUltra had in store. At the Senate report on MKUltra, Senator Ted Kennedy spoke on the lack of information and said this, quote, "The best safeguard against abuses in the future is a complete public accounting of the abuses of the past." And that is somebody who is much more intelligently saying what I was trying to say earlier, which is, as dark as it is, as unfortunate as it is, sometimes the truth needs to be out so we can safeguard ourselves against this kind of things happening in the future and know where we're steering as a populace in the future. The CIA did not succeed in creating any mind-controlling drug to our knowledge and claims to no longer be participating in experiments of this kind any longer.
What an episode.
I know.
Holy hell, dude.
What a deep dive of the new year, man. You woke me right up.
That's up there for one of my favorite episodes.
It's top 5 easy right now.
I was hyper engaged.
This is going to sound so cheesy, but I just want to give like an applause to Jillian, Christian, Gracie, the entire research team for, every week for the work you guys do to put this stuff together and make it easy for us to do our part. But holy goodness, tremendous job. I know how nebulous classified documents can be.
Right.
And so I know how much effort, or I assume how much effort went into this.
Yeah. At this point, research is like 90-95% Jillian and Gracie, and I just come in and kind of help on occasion. But yeah, the amount of, it's like with this one, especially because it's so dense, like that Senate hearing that we talked about in the beginning, that's one of the documents that's available to look at, and is actually where a majority of the information is found. It's a 173-page document.
Goodness.
Gee.
The amount of stuff that needs to be looked at for something like this.
Geez, 173. There's that 3 again. If this has been your door opening to Red Web, if this has been your first episode to us and you've just decided to join the task force, welcome. And if you've been a task force member of years old, I hope you've enjoyed this one. Let us know what you think. This is, again, to Fernando's point, I think this is one of our new favorites. I totally agree. But let us know what you think. There's a lot to unpack here, a lot of emotions in play, a lot of facts and stones left still untold and to unturn or whatever. But hit us up on social at Red Web Pod. And if you hit us up on TikTok, it's The Red Web. Of course, we have our email as well, redweb@roosterteeth.com. Thank you all so much. And before we close out, we're in the new year. We've talked about this a few times. Happy New Year, first and foremost, or last and foremost. We've said it a few times now, but Squonk, our Squonk plush is out. And at the moment of this recording, Task Force, you always show up. 50% sold out. We made sure to learn from Baby Hands. You guys sold that out in a day.
Yeah.
So we really upped the inventory to make sure that everybody who missed out could get in on some Squonk action. We've already seen people making some TikToks around Squonk.
Some very entertaining
melting ones. But yeah, store.roosterteeth.com. Squonk is there. Just make sure you click on the Red Web tab and it'll show all the stuff we got. But
a little tidbit. Eric, one of our coworkers.
Eric Bedour of Face Jam fame.
Told me to go into the delivery room, and there is a Squonk there that is.
Should we go get it now?
That is air vacuumed in a bag,
like shrink wrapped,
and it is it is Squonk shrink wrapped. And if you thought Squonk looked sad, there is another level, and it is literally putting him in a vacuum bag.
Can we take a picture of that and tweet that?
Yeah.
I went. There's no way this could have gotten any sadder, but here it is standing in front of me. I felt like. when you go, oh, squonk, I feel so
Yeah.
bad for him. It's like, yeah, and put him in a bag and
let's
suck out the air.
Suck them dry.
Yeah.
Man, oh, well, if you get him and you place him on a shelf, just don't make eye contact and he won't melt into a pool of water. And if he does, disclaimer, I'm sorry,
We're
there's
not
no
responsible.
refunds.
Like
You
we
know,
said that
if he
before.
melts,
Okay. You know what it is.
You know what
You
it
look
is.
at it, puddle of water.
Yeah.
So I really want to send someone literally just a wet box.
Oh my God. You got squonked. It's just like a little card. So you got squonked. Bro, I want to send them. What you send is like just a bunch of ice. So it keeps it going. It keeps the drip happening.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, like I said, whether you're Red Web Task Force class of 2020, 2021, or 2023, or 2022, I guess I don't want to skip 1 year, but it doesn't matter. Thanks for listening. Hope you had a blast of a holidays, and welcome to the new year. Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for another mystery.
Get ready for a lot of content, Task Force.
Woo!
See y'all later.